How's it going, guys and gals? It's Elder coming back at you. Um, I had to come back and kind of get things in order for this video. I originally filmed it and I didn't really like the way it came out as far as what I spoke about. Not because uh, what I spoke about wasn't what I wanted to, but it was because it was too rambly. So, with that said, I'm going to start off with my personal impressions after the open beta and the early access beta. As far as power goes, just raw power ratings go Necro, Sword, Rogue, and Barber the same, pretty much, and Druid tailing. Now, with that said, I kind of just want to go over each of the classes and some of their, general information. So, Necro, awesome power. It's great. It has great ability to fortify, so you can get full fortify pretty much 100% of the time. And this isn't including being able to turn into a completely untouchable blood mist. The minions are extremely strong, especially if you invest into them. Now, some people are saying, well, there's 3 points, 15% each, 45% total, right? However, as you level, of course, your minion stats go up too. It's not like your minions are just sitting at level 1 the entire time. So that 45%, it scales with, your level as well as your minions level. So there are other factors, obviously. Of course, there's going to be legendaries and so forth that can help, and other things later down the line. But in general, the minions are very strong. I mean, they can literally carry you through, at least as far as 25 goes. They destroy bosses. Um, and general skills, you have Bone, which are usually for crit, Darkness abilities that are usually a dot, and Blood abilities, which are usually for sustain in some way, shape, or form, because you can create blood orbs, which are like instant potions. And with a node here or there, you can actually get them to apply to your minions, so it's kind of nice. And then, of course, like I said, you can fortify fairly easily, so awesome. Sword has great offense and defense due to barriers. Its general breakdown, of course, is like fire is your dot skills. Of course, there's a little different there if you're using like meteor. Cold is going to be for your CC, and lightning is going to be your highest damage, pretty much. But other than that, it has its enchantment system. So you use a skill that has a secondary effect, and they're extremely powerful. Then you have Rogue. So Rogue, I kind of dissected a little bit more because there's more to kind of look at, because it is such a flexible class. So it has a good chance for good chunk of crit. Leech damage is decent. It has good buffs, and then it also has a talent specialization. And in there you can either have one where you do like 3 basic attacks, and your next spender has a certain effect, or the second one that I unlocked, which is basically you target a specific enemy and you build up your bar, and once you max out that bar, you have infinite amount of resource for that allotted amount of time, which is really good. Which means you can, just infinitely spam your spender during that time. Now, Barb, at first, I was a little iffy about it. I tried Bleed, tried other things, and as I played, it got much stronger. Once I got it to max level, it was even better. The power is really good. You can get a good amount of Fortify, but you do want to focus on your basic melee stats. You want to attack fast, build up your resources quickly. Of course, there are stats that can help generate resource for you, to increase the amount you generate, or you can use a percentage to lower the amount used on your spenders, or just a bit of both. Now, with that said, we didn't have access to the full artillery system that barbs are equipped with because we could not get access to the technique. Now, I don't have any clue about this as far as what it does. However, I know it increases the barb strength, obviously. And so with it in place, I'm pretty sure this will bring the barb up to, a pretty even level with other things. Druid. Druid had the least amount of power, just raw power. He could easily get fortified from transforming. Its kind of basic breakdown is, storms, which is wind and lightning. So either one of those counts as a storm spell or ability. It has some leech as werewolf, and it has mainly overpower and crit for werebear. Okay. Also, with Druid, we didn't have access to the secondary set of it's called Spirit bonus, and so these bonuses you can actually get. I think it's 4 or 5 passive buffs, and I'm not sure on all of their effects. But from what I've been able to kind of glean from information, it's general buffs. It's stuff that can easily help you along the way and make things a lot better and feel better while you're playing. So, taking that into consideration, the druid isn't in a terrible spot. However, I do believe, things need to be given a good look at. Now, I don't want to take too much time talking about each class because I do want to try and keep this video roughly about 25 minutes max. So I'm going to start talking about some general concerns that people have. Okay, one of the general concerns that I hear a lot about is respec. Respecting your points, going off of what the devs said about how at a certain point it'd be better to create a new character. Now, my understanding of this is just my gut intuition, I guess you would say, just my feeling about it. So, I'm not sure if they modified the cost to respec during the beta, but even if they didn't, at 25 it was costing me less than 3,000 gold, which is absolutely nothing. It's like 2 items, maybe one, depending on how good it is. So I can only assume at level 50, even if you push it to some sort of extreme, you're talking like 100 to 500k gold. And I literally went through hundreds and hundreds of thousands of gold during the beta. And respectfully, I mean, that's not bad. I mean, if you're doing a full respec and you're spending a couple 100,000 gold at level 50, you should be making more gold than I was making at level 25. So I think it's a pretty good balance. Now, I believe what they were speaking of is not at level 50, because level 50 is your max cap for your your skills, your skill tree. That's when you start switching over to your Paragon. Now, I believe what they meant when they said you had a max character, they're talking max. You have your Paragon board set up, you have everything just the way it should be for this specific character. It would be better to make a new character than spend the, I'd probably think it's probably like somewhere in the millions, like 10 million range to respec a full character. Just for how easy it is to get gold. But with that said, in my personal opinion, I have to agree with the devs. It would be better and more efficient to just make a new character, because you're talking about so much customization. There's multiple Paragon boards you'll be adding to this character, and you'll be moving them around and kind of going through them in a very specific way for your very specific build. So to me, I believe that's totally worth it. And you can still respec if you want. If you really want to. My understanding is, no matter where you are at, in the game, if you're max level with everything filled out, you can still respec completely. it's a lot of work to go from a fully decked out character back down to nothing and then have to build it back up. You still have all the points. You probably still have all your Paragon boards, but depending on the Paragon boards, because these are, from what I understand, these are things you find. You might have to find other boards and swap them out and do this and that and the other. Now, to me, that again, this is perfectly fine. It's not super casual, but it's not super like intense either. I think this is a good happy medium. Um, and I don't believe D4 is going to be the most casual game out there. Now, some people might see it as being super casual, and it might be casual in the sense that you can pick it up and play it. But I believe that D4 is going to have plenty of depth. Okay, so another general concern that I've heard is the power scale and the resource generation gap between, we'll say Necro and Druid. Okay? So, this goes back to what I was just talking about. So, there are stats that increase the amount of generation you have for your primary resource. On top of that, not only will you be able to get that stat from gear, so I believe it's willpower in most cases. Not only can you get that stat from gear, but on top of that, you'll be getting stats when you're filling out your Paragon board. Now, me personally, I wish I could have put stats in during the leveling experience, so that way I can choose where I want my stats to go. So if I want more generation of something, or if I want more defense, or if I want more whatever the case might be, more crit, that'd be awesome. Now with that said though, like I was saying, the Paragon board is kind of filling that gap, because you're going to be adding stats inside of the Paragon board as well as other modifiers to your skills. So that's kind of where that goes. Now, another general concern is skill depth. And skill depth, I believe, is a non-starter due to a few reasons. One of them primarily being that we only got to level 25. However, with that said, you have to remember something. So you're taking a base skill, and this applies to every skill section. This isn't just one or the other. You're taking one base skill that trees off, branches out into a secondary effect, and then a third at that. And it's, some of them, it doesn't change the way that the skill works, but it does change what the skill does and what it offers. After that point, you're also getting legendaries or uniques that will modify that skill in one way, shape, or form. It could change the way that the skill works, it could change the damage type, whatever the case might be. And then, after that point, you're going into your Paragon boards and you're modifying the skill and the strength of that skill even more. To me, that is, you take that into consideration, as well as the fact that there's so many other stats, so there's, base damage, so cold damage, shadow damage, so forth. There's overpower, there's lucky hit, there's so many other stats that are in there. If you actually look at it from that perspective, it is much more PoE-like than PoE fans want to admit. I personally think this is a good amount of depth for skills. I've had discussions with people, and we've talked about PoE and we've talked about Last Epoch, and in all honesty, like Last Epoch, it's not very, it's not super in depth either. You take one skill, you modify it. Yes, it's very cool the way that you modify it, that you can modify the way it works, just like, but that's just what I was just saying right now. Is you're taking a base skill, you're modifying through legendary items, and you're modifying it even further using Paragon boards. Now, one thing I want to talk about personally is crafting depth. I would like there to be a much more to crafting much more to the crafting system than upgrades and just modifications of like a singular stat. Uh, from what I can tell, you can upgrade items, you can change a stat on the item, re-roll it. That's fine and dandy. But what I would actually like to see is an actual crafting system inside of the game. One where I can create base items and I can modify them into magic or rare items, and I can re-roll them if I need to, and I can, so forth and so on. And these systems already exist. There's a method in D2, there's a method in PoE, there's a method in Last Epoch, and there are ways to take any and all of those systems and kind of combine them and put them into D4 in a proper manner. Now, obviously, we could use the blacksmith for creating the item. I want this base or that base or the other base, or maybe even have it as a kind of area type, specificity. My apologies, having a hard time saying a word. It happens sometimes. So those specificities, like if the cold region have specific kind of gear, or whatever the case might be, But it's just like any other game, though. If you look at it, the base types, and the base types are just like any other base types. You start out with a specific amount of defense. It goes up on that specific type of, equipment. And in this specific case, you don't specifically have, like evasion gear and barrier gear and armor gear. You just have armor gear, which is fine. So then you just have one base type. I understand that maybe some people wanted, other base types, and that's totally a possibility in the future. I'm pretty sure they can easily add in a secondary set of equipment. But being able to create the base type and then maybe take it over to the enchanter or whatever, I forget what it is. It's not an enchantress, because I'm pretty sure it was a gentleman this time. And then be able to convert it into either a magical item or a rare item, depending on what materials you need. Maybe a way to reinforce, make the item superior before you do so. You're already collecting berries and iron and leather. There has to be more to the crafting than this. I'm hoping that there's more to it once launch happens. But that is, right now crafting is very shallow, and I really, really, really want and expect more out of D4. Okay, so those are general concerns. That last one was mainly something that I wanted to talk about. Now let's get into some of the glaring issues. Okay, so dungeon layout. Everybody's discussed dungeon layout to exhaustion. So my take is this. People are complaining about having to backtrack and so forth. A lot of the layouts that I saw kind of had a circular kind of feel to them, which is okay. But another way to make this a lot easier, because there were some that, they would go one way and they dead end. And they'd go another way and they dead end. Now, if I have to grab an item and take it back, why not just have some sort of, little miniature waypoint or something that brings me back to the podium, so that way I can place the item and head to the other side. That would save time. It would make the dungeons more fun and fast, and it just would feel a lot less like a slog. And this applies to destroying, all of the objectives, like the grabbing an item, taking it to a pedestal, or destroying a structure, etc. Or even killing specific monsters for collecting, whatever the case might be. If it dead ends at any point, I should be able to teleport back to a certain location, whether that should be like right in front of the door. That way I can get to the opposite side. It makes the most sense, and I believe that's an easy fix. The other objective that a lot of people have an issue with is killing all the monsters, and I completely agree with this. 90 to 95%. Okay? If I miss a few mobs here and there, it should not be a big deal because there should be more monsters. I am extremely disheartened by the lack of density, not just outside of dungeons, but inside of dungeons. It definitely needs to be taken up a notch. I'm hoping that endgame is much more dense. But that's my personal opinion, because this game is supposed to be a power fantasy. You're supposed to go in and just destroy hordes of mobs and see loot drop, and you know, it should be fun, and that's my personal opinion, and I believe a lot of people would agree with it. Now, one thing I need to talk about is mobs, and specifically mob variety. So yes, I know we only saw Act 1, and I understand that there's going to be other mob types in other areas. However, I do believe they need to increase the mob types in each area at this point, as well as each dungeon should have its own boss. I do not want to see the same boss in more than one dungeon, especially if it's like, if it's 2 dungeons, maybe. After you get to 3 dungeons, it's extremely repetitive, and that is not okay, especially for bosses. You want new, I want to see a new boss, I want to see new mechanics, I want to have fun with it. Okay. Okay, so we're getting a little close on time here. Let's see, density we talked about. Oh, okay, so the scaling. Now, I'm good with it completely scaling. However, I believe that monsters outside of town, so the ones that you see in, just outside of town in general, while you're traveling to dungeons, whatnot, when you can run into people, they should scale with you as far as level. But what needs to be adjusted is their health. If you lower their health a bit, per level, you still gain some strength as you level. That way you don't feel so weak by comparison to like a level 4. You're level 25 and you're struggling with a mob, where level 4, level 5 other classes just like popping them off like nothing. All it takes is a couple little tweaks here and there for the health, and that'll be fine. And they don't have to do it to every single monster, but every monster outside of town that isn't in a dungeon, I believe, should have some sort of adjustment made, especially if they start at a specific level. It shouldn't go beyond a certain point for their health, so that way, yes, they can still be dangerous because they're getting stronger, but you can still kill them, at a decent pace because you've actually gotten stronger. Drop rates, they're too high. And from what they said, it's 3 times as much. You're getting it's a 3 multiplier during the beta. I believe even after the reduction, it's going to be too much. I believe that the drop rates need to be lowered even further. With that said, comes a very big issue, and in my opinion, the biggest issue, and that's reliance on legendary powers to make skills viable. I should not need a legendary power to make any skill viable or setup viable. I should be able to use any character with any skills that I feel, that I enjoy, with rare items, with no legendary powers, and still make it work one way or another. Now, I'm not saying that it has to be perfect, but I am saying that it should feel like I can actually use those skills and have fun doing so. Speaking of which, that is one thing I can say. Now, when I talk about leveling out the playing field for the characters and classes, I do not mean every class should feel the same as every other class. What I do mean is every So every druid skill, so every base, basic skill or core skill should feel similar in power to each other, because you don't want to pigeonhole people into choosing one specific skill just because it is literally number wise the best. Like right now, everybody on Necro was playing with Corpse Explosion because it is so good. It is so good compared to the other skills around it. And this is good, but bad. Because you want to be able to use all the other skills too. You want to be able to make builds with all the other skills. And so this has to be looked at and tweaked. And this is more just numbers, okay? This is just them going in and being like, okay, so we need, this is doing too little damage. Let's raise it just a little bit. This is balancing, and they need the balance. They really need the balance. Okay. Let's get into the final little stretch here. I'm running a little bit longer than I expected. Okay, so the last bit of stuff that I want to touch on. So keybinds. So they have it set up for movement, skill 1, and interaction. If they change the left click to where I can just have it as move and interact, that would be fantastic, because then I can move and I can pick up items and interact with people with that left click, and just have my skills on my keyboard. That is fine. But changing, remove skill 1 from that, that combination, and just have it movement and interaction. That's perfect. Okay. Number of keys or modified. See. Okay, yeah. So, secondly, we need a second action bar. 100%. This is not a discussion. There needs to be a second action bar. I don't care if I need to press shift or control to access it. I need a second action bar. Okay. This is very important because, let's say, let's take Necro for instance. So Necro is already super powerful, so forth and so on. But I want more utility. What if I, I have my minions and, I have other skills that I'm using, but I want some curses and stuff, and I get it off of items, and I want to be able to use those. Well, I can't use them because I only have 6 slots. This doesn't make any sense to me. You should be able to have at least 2 rows of in that action bar. It should be 2 rows, and I should be able to activate everything and have fun with that and play around with my skills. Okay, this is something that needs to happen, period. Map is not detailed enough because there are areas within the areas, and so those labels should be on the map, in my personal opinion. There needs to be an overlay map, one that is transparent, so that way if I want to have it on top and I'm using it to move around instead of having the little map up top on the right, I can do that. And I need them to allow me to make permanent map markers, because if I want to mark a specific monster, for instance, certain named mob or whatever, because I like farming that mob, or I might want to farm that mob later, I should be able to do that. The stats and materials screen, it defaults to it defaults to materials. Just default to stats, please. That's an easy fix. Nothing there. The general aesthetic of the user interface needs to be modified. It can be so much better. Please look into it. And last but not least, so general aesthetics, like I said. Also, some of the font could be modified just a little bit, just to make it look a little bit better. Same thing for the font, like on the dropped items. It just kind of doesn't fit. But actual final note, character creation. There needs to be more face options, more body types for each type, as long as it fits within the archetype of the character class. That's my personal opinion on this. These are my thoughts after playing the early access and the open beta. Let me know what you think in the comments. Hit that like, hit that sub, and Hope you liked the video. But with that said, this is Elder Vo saying, over and out.